and welcome to our show. I'm Greg Bauer, and those of you that are regular viewers, I'm missing my co-host today. She's a little bit under the weather, but she'll be back next time. And also, we don't have Angie and Wicket with us today. They've been giving us static lately about doing this show, and they want to raise and pay, and I said, well, you sit home and think about it today. But anyway, seriously, we're glad that you've joined us for this really great show. Talking about quilts and the Quilt Block Challenge down at the National Quilt Museum, and we'll get more into that as we go. But I'd like to tell you about a couple of upcoming shows. We are going to do one on hummingbirds, and we also are going to do one on training your dog. So you want to stay tuned for those, and you'll see them coming up in the paper and that sort of thing. So, but anyway, I want to get to what we're about today, looking at quilts, and I want to introduce our two guests today. To my immediate right here is Judy Schwender. She's a veteran of our show. She's done a number of shows with the quilts, and we're just so happy to have you back today, Judy. She's the curator and registrar at the National Quilt Museum. And to her right is Becky Glazby, who is the director of education at the National Quilt Museum, and she's going to be talking primarily about the School Block Challenge, and we'll hear more about that a little bit later. So pull up your chairs, sit and relax and enjoy seeing quilts. So let's start first of all with you, Becky. Yes, with Becky, and then I'll come back to Judy here in just a second. Tell us real quickly about the School Block Challenge. Many of our viewers may not have heard about that.
The School Block Challenge is an annual competition sponsored by the National Quilt Museum and Moda Fabrics, and it's open to kids from K through 12, and they get to make a school block, send it in, and it gets judged and displayed at the museum. Okay.
And the viewers should know at that point that a school block is not the same as a quilt. It's much smaller, isn't it?
Correct.
And we'll see a lot of good examples about that and some really creative things. I've seen the things you're going to do today, and the kids did a wonderful job. And Judy, as curator and registrar, you basically kind of determine what goes in the gallery, don't you?
Oh, yes, I do. I have a fun time and a fun job. Especially in the main gallery. Those are our quilts from our own collection, and that's what you'll be seeing today. And some are older, some are newer, one is real new, and that makes it fun.
Oh, yes. And if our viewers have never been to the National Quilt Museum, it's a must, absolute must visit to see all, and we're just going to see some of them today. So
yes.
Well, let's get started, Judy. Tell us about the first quilt.
Well, the first quilt, it's a little bit out of, how do I want to say this, out of season, because here we are, everybody in Paducah is like ready for spring and we just want flowers, but this one's called 12 Days of Christmas.
Okay.
But I included it because, of course, you have geese, you have collie birds, you have French hens, and I just can't even remember. I've got the words turtle doves, you know, geese a-laying, swans a-swimming, all those wonderful things. And this is a quilt by B.J. Elvgren. It's from 1983. And as you can see, it's not a regular rectangle like most quilts. It has this wonderful architectural edge to it. And it's all framed in so that all the different animals and the lords and the maids and everyone are all gathered together in the center. Okay. And it's, if you like animals, it's a fun quilt to see. And we usually have that up during Christmas.
Okay. Second quilt.
Now this one's always a real big hit with our visitors. This one's called Barking Up the Wrong Tree. It's by Sharon Malick. This one's from 1999. And if you'll notice, there's one prominent dog barking up, apparently, the wrong tree. Okay. But if you start looking at the trunks of the other trees, you'll see other dogs blended in and hiding in the trunks of the other trees. And there's just so many possibilities for finding the dogs and where everything is. And it's a really fun quilt.
And that's part of the fun of is trying to see where all those other dogs are.
Oh yes, definitely.
All right. Let's move on to the next one.
Oh, Buffalo Magic. Buffalo Magic is one of my favorites because it combines Native American symbols with buffalo. And when we were talking about buffalo before the show in regards to buffalo meat. Anyway, but these buffalo are on a quilt, and they're accurately depicted, but with a real nice Native American twist.
Okay. That's got some very unusual characters and work in it, doesn't it?
Yes, and it's a good solid block style quilt with a sashing in between the blocks. So I think people will enjoy seeing all the different buffalo on that quilt.
What's next?
What's next? Next we have, now, this is the first time that you'll see this quilt. Cool. This quilt isn't even up in the gallery yet.
Okay.
We have this initiative, 20 Quilts for 20 Years, and this is a wonderful new addition to our collection. Okay. It's by Ellen Ann Eddy. It's called Dancing in the Light.
Oh, okay.
And it's full of katydids and, what do I call them? Dragonflies and all kinds of bugs and just little creatures like that. And it's all done with what we call thread work. In other words, all the thread that you use when you're sewing with the sewing machine has been it's been stitched so thickly, the colors are the thread. Oh. So the colors you're seeing in this are not the fabric, it's actually thread.
Oh, that's interesting.
So it really glistens and glows from a distance.
Okay.
And it's this one will be unveiled during the Friends reception during Quilt Show Week. Okay. And I'm real excited about hanging it in the gallery. I think it's going to be a real crowd pleaser.
Good. All right. What's next?
Oh, I love this one. Feathered Beauties by Pamela Humphreys. This one's from 2005, and this was the Best Hand Workmanship Award winner that year. This one has birds, and this time of year, we're all starting to hear birds. And all the birds are coming back, and one decides to wake me up every morning at 5 o'clock right outside my window.
Of course.
Of course, you know, I can't wait till like 7:30. But so here we have beautiful applique work and beautiful hand quilting, and it all supports the depiction of the feathered beauties, the birds. And there's some really excellent, I mean, her depictions are so spot on that it looks like like she painted it on. Okay. It's really excellent.
Let's look at one more before we take a break.
Okay. Oh, this is fun. This one's called Garden Party by Faye Anderson. And it's from 1987, so, you know, it's going back a ways. But it has snakes, and it has a lion, and it has an alligator. And it's a very fun quilt. And
it looks like it is. Yeah,
and we're just real excited about having this one because we've used the lion as kind of the logo for a lot of the children's programming there at the museum. And this has always been a fun quilt to have. It's just lively, and we like the animals.
Well, I'll tell you, we're just beginning to get a real good start on these now. But we want to take a short break now and let our viewers hear about a happy tale. And this is about a big old fat orange cat named Maxwell who lives with Darlene and me. So give a listen. I think you'll enjoy it.
This is a happy tale about Maxwell, a 6-year-old orange and white male cat. When Maxwell was a little over a year old, he was living at Project Hope No-Kill Humane Society in Metropolis, Illinois. He was anxiously awaiting the chance to have a forever home. One day, Darlene Pickford was taking Maxwell to PetSmart in Paducah to stay for a while in the Animals for Adoption area. Darlene had always wanted a cat with Maxwell's coloring, and she called her husband, Greg Bauer, to tell him she had found her Christmas present. Greg agreed, and Maxwell never made it to PetSmart. When Maxwell arrived at their home, he found that there were several other cats, and so he had some brothers and sisters. It took some time for the others to accept Maxwell, but it finally happened, and he had his forever home at last. For a while, Maxwell was a lap cat, but as he grew in size, that changed. Maxwell loves to have Darlene brush him. Darlene says that Maxwell is a little pompous, and that's why his name is Maxwell and not Max. Thank you, Darlene and Greg, for Maxwell's Happy Forever Home.
Welcome back. We hope you enjoyed that little tale about Maxwell. I said he's a big fat cat. When he came to us, he was about 4 or 5 pounds as a kitten. Now he's about 18 pounds, so and just a real character. This afternoon we're talking about quilts at the National Quilt Museum, and our two guests, Judy Schwender, curator and registrar there, and Becky Glazby, who's director of education. And we've been looking at some of the quilts that are currently in the gallery and will be in the future too. So let's return to our sequence of things. Judy, what's our next quilt?
Goto and Friends.
Okay.
And Goto was a goat that lived down the lane from the maker of this quilt, Barbara Barber. She's from England.
Okay.
And the quilt is from 1995. And you see you can see on this quilt, Goto's there, but there's also a cat, a fox, I want to say a deer, but a fawn.
Right.
And a
That's a young deer.
dog, yeah, young deer. And just, it's a real delightful group of animals that the maker
Yeah.
saw in her area there in England when she would walk down her lane.
A very diverse set of animals.
Yes, and it's wonderful. It's applique, and it's done on the machine. So it's machine quilted and machine appliqued, and it's beautifully done.
Okay. All right, let's look at the next one.
Javanese jungle.
Okay.
Now, of course, if you have a jungle, you have an elephant, and you have a zebra, and you have a leopard, a spotted leopard, and a tiger, and I believe there's a snake in there somewhere. And there's a stork or pelican type bird, and there's also, I'm not up on a lot of my deer from other parts of the world. It's like a springbok or a reebok or some type of deer like that, but I'm not that familiar with what a jungle deer would be called.
I can't help you there either.
But one of the neat things about this quilt is that the ear on the elephant is sewn on such that it's an actual flap on the quilt. So it projects out from the quilt. So
Kind of a 3D effect.
3D effect, and it's real fun that way. And the colors are real lively, orange and blue, opposite on the color wheel. So that creates a real nice liveliness in the quilt.
Okay. These have all been beautiful so far. What do we have next, Judy?
Pandas Around the World. And this is by Shirley Kelly. That's from 1993. And Shirley's from Colden, New York. She was a art teacher there for many years. And there's more than 50 pandas depicted on the faces of this quilt. And I usually have it hanging between two of our movable walls so you can also see the backside. And there's also pandas on the backside that she's appliqued.
That's unusual.
Yeah, it's definitely a two-sided quilt. And her here again, they're spot on. You look at them and it's almost as if it's a photograph. Their pandaness comes through real strongly. It's you just want to go up and pet them. Of course, you can't touch the quilts.
Right. If we get a little time, we'll maybe explain to our viewers a little bit later about this thing with a two-sided quilt, because that's very unusual, but we'll hold that. Okay, let's move to the next. We have some time to do that.
Well, we have the Map Makers, and that's by Cassandra Williams. It's a quilt from 2003, and you see this one animal in there, and that's Seaman the dog in the lower left corner, and Seaman accompanied Lewis and Clark and Sacagawea and all the other members of the party on their travels through, across the western United States. And think about it. Here's this dog, and he's just trotting along, and he's making history, and he doesn't even know it. And I think that's so cool. And he's just there, kind of just do.
He could care less.
He could care less, So, but it's a fun quilt, and it's painted and it's done with thread work and a raillage applique, so it's a good quilt.
What do we have next?
Now this one is new as of last year. This was last year's Best of Show winner, Tribute to Tolkien by Sue McCarty.
Okay.
And one of the things in the Tolkien legends is there's horses. And the horses are depicted quite beautifully on especially the bottom part of the quilt, and it's all done with thread work, and it's like a silvery blue thread on a black ground. And of course there's other parts of the Tolkien legend on this quilt, such as Gollum and so forth. can we talk about a mythical animal like a dragon? There's dragons depicted on here. So it's got animals and it's got the legend. So horses figured in prominently.
Okay, and then I think we have one more quilt, don't we?
No, that's
two.
pretty much it.
Oh, pretty much it. Okay.
Yeah.
I lost my count.
That's okay. That's okay.
Well,
You always think I have a whole bunch.
I know, and you do, Judy.
Oh, I know.
Oh.
This is not the whole
Museum.
collection. Yeah, we have a whole museum full.
And all these quilts can be seen along with a lot of others down at the National Quilt Museum here in Paducah, and we'll talk more about exactly where you're located and that sort of thing at a later point. But we want to take a break now for hear about another happy tale, and this is about a little cat named Ginger Sue. You will love her story. She's a character, so give a listen.
This is a happy tale about Ginger Sue. Ginger Sue is an 8-year-old tortoiseshell female minx cat. Minx cats do not have tails, which seems strange for a cat. Ginger Sue was living at Project Hope No-Kill Humane Society in Metropolis, Illinois, while waiting for a forever home. She had lost her eye from an infection, and so the people at the shelter were afraid that she would not be adopted. Then, one day, Darlene Pigford came to do some work at the shelter. Darlene came back to the shelter several times, and each time, Ginger Sue would climb up on the side of the cage and meow, hoping to get noticed. Finally, one day, Darlene decided that Ginger Sue should go home with her. When Greg, Darlene's husband, saw Ginger Sue, he agreed that she should stay since both Greg and Ginger Sue don't see very well. Greg said that every cat in Kentucky should have a double name, so I became Ginger Sue. Both Darlene and Greg say that Ginger Sue's mood changes like the weather, and that she is the original curious cat that likes to get into everything she can. Thank you, Darlene and Greg, for giving Ginger Sue a forever happy home.
Welcome back. Ginger Sue is a piece of work. She's another one of the ones that of our herd, if you will, that Darlene and I have at home, and just a sweet little cat, very moody. She's a minx, stubtail, but as you heard. Okay. Well, we're visiting with Becky Glazby and with Judy Schwender from the National Quilt Museum today, and we've seen some quilts and talked about them. Now, Becky, we're going to turn over to you on the School Block Challenge. You kind of told us at the beginning of the show what that was about. It's competition, and you brought some wonderful examples of those quilt blocks with you today.
I did, and I just will preface by saying that we had 129 blocks entered this year, which was quite fabulous to have all these different entries from the kids.
It grows every year, doesn't it?
It does grow every year, and this year we set a new record. We have 16 states represented from across the country. Our goal, of course, is to have a block entered from all 50, but we're slowly working our way up, so
Okay.
it's on its way there.
Well, let's take a look at some of these wonderful examples.
Sure. Our first one is called The Checkered Tree, and that's by one of the local homeschool groups here in Kentucky. So we had a couple of the homeschools as well as public schools working on their different quilts and during their learning, so that's always a nice representation.
Yes, yes.
You can see the horse depicted there and the little apple sequins that she's put into the tree to kind of make it stand out
Okay.
quite nicely from there.
And what's next?
Next is Horse Arena, and that nicely borders our horse. The tail and the bell are 3D. The student has added some loose threads on there to create the horse's tail and the mane, and then added the little bell around its neck because she enjoyed horses. So it's always neat to see what they come up with.
Yes. Now, and we should just point out one thing real quickly, that these are from different age categories, all the way from K through 12, aren't they?
Yes, these first few blocks are from the elementary school category up through 4th grade.
And I'm just amazed every time when I see these, how creative these kids are.
It's true, and what they can come up with at such a young age and how they can depict that into their fabric is very neat to see.
Okay, let's check some more out here then.
All right, our next one is called Something's Fishy, and this was a girl from Pennsylvania, and she ended up winning 3rd place in the K through 4th grade category.
Okay.
So she's got a little ocean scene here with her fish, and they're machine appliqued onto her block, which is pretty technical work for a K through 4th grader, a young student. So it's a very well depicted scene that she has
And,
going on.
and many of these kids now will go on to become master quilters, won't they?
We hope so. We've had several, especially in the high school category, that have asked for sewing machines. So we're hoping that they'll stick with it, and they've enjoyed their process so far.
Okay.
It's always fun.
What's next here?
Next is Native Americans of Ohio, and we had a group of classes from schools in Ohio, and they've done these blocks that are very similar. They're all an Ohio Star quilt block pattern. And then in the corners and in the centers, they've represented different aspects of their history. This one is Native Americans, and we've got some depictions of the animals and their drawings there, and we've had others that go through different aspects of Ohio's history and interests.
Okay. Ohio had a lot of Native Americans there, as did all the states in the Midwest.
Definitely.
So, alrighty, what do we have now? I like
This block, yes, I like this one too. It's very nice and cheery, and it's called Queen Bee. You can see the bee in the center has a little crown that's added to it to make sure it's the queen and not just one of the worker bees. And this is from a local homeschool student in Illinois,
Okay.
and it's very bright and cheery
Yes.
with those fabrics.
Next.
Next is called The Ocean, and these are fish, another fish representation, but these are trapunto fishes, which means that they have been stuffed and stitched onto the background fabric. So those fish are 3D, and they've been stuffed with some plastic bags and some other kind of scrap bits of fabric to give them that dimension, which is a really neat aspect for the quilts to have. And then the little fishes on the side are some buttons that they've added in as well to help out.
Okay. Our next one is?
Next up, we enter into our middle school category, the 5th through 8th grade blocks. Again, this Ohio Star, and it represents the aviation in Ohio. They've got John Glenn on there, they have the Ohio State Flower, and then a cardinal on there as the state bird of Ohio.
Okay.
So some state pride coming
Yes.
out of there.
Oh, that is great. All right, our next one is?
Our next one is called Who Quilts for You? And we've got 3 little owls depicted there. And this was by 2 students, again, from a local homeschool academy in the Paducah area. And they've got some little yo-yos and buttons on there for the eyes, again, making that 3-dimensional quality, which the students are really good at adding in the dimension and embellishments into their quilts to help make them stand out and make them really great to see as they come in.
All righty. Going on with middle school.
Next up is called Leaping for the Sky, and we have this fish boldly leaping out of the water. There's some reflective and shimmery threads that are stitched in there, and they've got a creative use of ribbons for the water as well as the fabric pieces for their fish.
Okay. Next.
Next is called this one is called Anna's Bunny Block, and this was a neat story with the block that the girl owns a bunny, and on the corner of the ear is embroidered the bunny's name, which is Anna, and it's only got 1 N on the ear, but in her description she said it has 2 because when they put it in there that the rabbit was too small when they first put it in, so now that she's grown she's gotten much bigger.
Yes.
Fill in that name.
Okay. And?
This block here is called Nature's Window. It's, again, a local homeschool student right over the river in Illinois. And this one took first place in the 5th through 8th grade category. And we can see this excellent depiction here of these bluebirds in their nest. And it's some sweater material, and they've pleated their fabric really nicely to give a very nice depiction of the birds and of the scene that they wanted to create.
Okay. And?
This one is one of our high school blocks, and it's called Marvelous Pisces. There's a lot of very good technique and machine quilting in here. We've got some stipple stitching and these really fun, crazy threads. And the little lures that they've created are rolled up pieces of fabric to create kind of like bait on a hook for these fish. And so that's a very neat depiction. We had a lot of underwater ocean type themes this year come through.
Okay.
This is one of my favorites. It's called Who Says Coffee Will Stunt Your Growth? And we've got this giraffe leaning in to take a sip out of their little coffee cup. This is from a local student in Callaway County. Again, another high school block, and it was just really neat use of the polka dot fabric that they had to create the spots on the giraffe and to give this really kind of out of the box depiction of some animals and for this quilt block. So it's been a joy to see them all come in and see what they've created.
Yes, absolutely. What's next?
I think that might be our last block.
Is that our last one? Okay.
Yep, but there's more on display at the museum that they can check out. And
Okay,
it'll be
and
good.
how, if we have some of our viewers that would like to have participate in the School Block Challenge, where can they find information out about this, Becky?
They can find information on our website, nationalquiltmuseum.org, and all that information's there, plus some of the past winners that they get to check out.
Okay, and there's a link up there that will take them to that.
Yep.
And the other thing we probably should note in there, and again remind our viewers, that these are not full quilts.
Correct.
These are a miniature quilt, if you will, I
They
guess.
are. They're a large block. They're about a 16-inch block square, and they're just the tops. They're not fully quilted all the way through, so the kids don't have to do the whole process. It's just a small piece of it.
But we know what has happened in the past too, that some of these blocks have been taken then and made into the regular full-size quilts.
Yes,
So,
they can be. The blocks are returned to the students, and they get to turn them into a full-on quilt.
yeah. Okay, well, we're about to wrap things up a little bit, and Judy, tell us a little bit about where we can get information and come to the Quilt Museum here in Paducah.
Oh, definitely come to the Quilt Museum. We're right downtown. We're at 215 Jefferson Street.
Okay.
And of course, we're down next to the parking lot, which is right next to the flood wall, which, you know, everybody knows where the flood wall is. And if you want to check out our presence on the web, we're at www.quiltmuseum.org.
Okay.
If you want to look at the quilts that are in our collection, the quilts are, you can find those at the Quilt Index online,
Okay.
www.quiltindex.org.
Well, we hope all our viewers will take advantage. If they've not been to the Quilt Museum, they should go. And if they have been there, there will always be something new for them. So,
Absolutely.
Yes.
well, as we wrap things up today, then, Judy, I want to thank you so much for coming and bringing your pictures with your quilts, and
Thank
Becky
you.
for bringing information about the School Block Challenge. And we hope that our viewers have enjoyed this show. And so in closing, while I'm doing it myself today, the others will be back with me next time, believe me. And I just want to remind our viewers what we say every time. Give your pet a little extra love today and every day. See you next time.